Have you ever taken an online quiz of a personality test? Just when you are expecting the result, there is a message that says, to see your results, please subscribe.
Yeah.
Now, this, often tempts the user to subscribe, which otherwise he or she may not generally have subscribed.
Right, sure. I've experienced this, Subhadra. There are several patterns like this that I see online, and I always thought it was relating to an advertising tactic or a strategy in the online or the digital market realm. I didn't think much of it, so much so until in the last couple years, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs have issued a set of guidelines under the Consumer Protection Act 2019 to protect consumers against risks from such dark patterns.
So then now let's talk all about the dark patterns, right? Now, what is dark pattern is nothing but basically advertising or marketing strategies that mislead the consumers into kind of taking certain actions which they had no intention to do. So tactics like creating false urgencies or concealing certain hidden cost, etc., especially using the user interface, which we call as UI, user experience, which is the UX, and they are the business practices which is used especially with the objective of making monetary benefits for the platforms or for the app owners.
Right.
Now, the benefits, in fact, are to the companies at the expense of the consumers.
Right.
These patterns are typically prevalent online, typically in food aggregator apps, if you see, travel websites, entertainment websites, etc. Such tactics are also used to boost a lot of sales and revenue or collect valuable consumer data based on which further marketing can be curated.
All right. Subhadra, when you were mentioning about dark patterns, I just wanted to share something that I experienced recently. So when I was working, I had this constant pop-up come from one of these websites. It just kept saying, you were mentioning about personality tests, something relating to it. There was a test which said, do you want to know what you were in your past life, or did you have a previous birth? Sort of curiosity, I just clicked on it and I was taking the test. And at the end of the test, as you had mentioned, it asked for an email ID. And then it said optional. But when I clicked that and went further, it said, please place your left thumb for a fingerprint. That kind of got me thinking, because though there was a disclaimer that said it'll be safe, but I found it rather odd, because I've never taken a test where it says you please put your fingerprints there, because I kind of sensed a potential misuse, and so I came out of it. So when you were just mentioning about this dark patterns, I was able to kind of relate to it. And then I realized that dark patterns have percolated so much into the digital world and the online content and the marketing strategies, so much so that the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, they have identified and listed a whole set of dark patterns. There are about 13, 14 of them. And we'd like to, share with our viewers some of the most important ones there. For instance, there's something called a false urgency. Now, what does that do? It's creating a false sense of urgency to pressure the consumer or the user to make immediate purchase. I'm sure you have also experienced this, and I have, because when we are booking a hotel room or when we're booking a movie ticket online, it just says fast filling, or only 2 rooms left.
Last 2 left. Yes.
Yeah, 2 left. 30 others are viewing the same. So, or when you're booking tickets also, it says only 3 seats are available. So it kind of pushes a false sense of urgency to make you book that ticket or the room fast, right? Yeah.
Yes. Sandhya, adding to that, there is another pattern which is called as basket sneaking, which all of us have experienced here, which means including some additional items or products or kind of services, or sometimes even donation amounts you can see in the sale bill without the consent of the user, other than any kind of legitimate charges like packing or delivery or government taxes, which are disclosed upfront to the user, right?
Right.
So if you look, especially for an example, if I have to bring out, in any kind of this rapid home delivery apps, it's uncommon to find an item in the cart which was not added by us.
Mm.
But while there is a remove option, just the presence of the product or the service onto the, it says consider for buying it, right? So
Right,
this is something on the aspect of, I would say, basket sneaking.
right. Okay, next there is a dark pattern called confirm shaming. I've heard of body shaming, but confirm shaming was something I was very curious to know what it was. So, confirm shaming, basically, it uses negative language or keys in or on a negative emotion and creates a sense of fear or insecurity or shame, uh,
Right,
thereby pressuring the purchaser to purchase the product or service. If I had to give an example, several times when we've booked flight tickets, we've said an air ticket app uses the phrase when it asks for additionally buying an insurance. The basket
right,
sneaking that you said there actually happens. Suppose it asks to buy additional insurance and I say no. Instead of saying no, it says I choose the risk of remaining uninsured. Now, when the user does that, it actually kind of keeps the user thinking. I mean, it's just human
correct.
nature to do that. By not taking the insurance, will something uh,
Happen. Yeah.
unfortunate happen, right? Another example, as we were just talking before we got onto this discussion, I remember going. I mean, I had happened to see there was a website, a medical website, which spoke about um, like a first aid emergency kit. It was marketing the purchase of a first aid emergency kit. So it asks for, yes, I want to purchase the kit. Instead of saying, no, I don't want to purchase as the second option, it just plainly says, no, I shall bleed to death. Now that is
Right.
creating a sense, it's a strong negative emotion, right?
Yes.
So it kind of makes the viewer, Arey, I'm shamed if I don't do that. So it
Correct.
keys in on a negative emotion.
Right. So, Sandhya, adding to this, there's another one called as forced action,
Mm,
where it forces the user to buy any kind of additional product or services which is completely unrelated to the intended purpose.
okay.
So, for example, forcing the user to subscribe to a newsletter, subject to which alone, which is intended for the item which is available, right?
Right,
So, it's
right,
a forced action. The other one is something called as subscription trap,
right,
where you are making the process of a cancellation of a paid subscription, which is complex, lengthy, or impossible.
right,
So, what they do here is hiding the cancel, the button cancel subscription option, forcing the user to provide the payment details or authorization of any kind of auto debits or to avail a free subscription. I
right.
think this we've seen through quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Interface interference has been identified as another dark pattern, which is a deceptive pattern which interferes with the user seller interface or manipulates the interface information such that the user tends to act in a manner which is actually beneficial to the seller, right?
Right.
Then there is another dark pattern called bait and switch, which is basically offering one option under the guise of another. For
Right.
example, you can offer a cheap or an even free product, but then there's a catch. When users get to the checkout, the product turns to be either out of stock or instead there's a suggestion to buy something similar but more expensive product or a product which is of a lower quality. I'm sure we've
Correct.
experienced that as well. The out of stock I've seen a lot. Yeah.
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 So there's one more adding to this thing, Sandhya, which is called as drip pricing, right?
Right.
It is a deceptive method of showing the price.
Mm,
So not revealing all the elements of the final price, which is upfront, and revealing them only after we click on to this purchase confirmation,
correct.
resulting in the user having to pay a higher price than what he had actually accepted for. So
Right.
also incomplete disclosure of facts pertaining to the product or the service price. So example, I would say a consumer say booking a flight and then the online platform only shows certain price. But at the final checkout page, if you see, the payment is being made a little bit, the price would be higher and than what is being charged by the platform to the consumer.
Right.
We don't get a complete disclosure as such in the first level itself.
Right, right.
Then there is something which is called as online nagging, where you burdening, the user with repeated requests or options unrelated to the intended purchase. So
Right,
thus you're kind of disrupting the intended transaction as such. For example, there are platforms which are asking the users to give their phone numbers for some kind of supposedly security purposes. You
right,
go on them. So
right,
sometimes you're so irritated, you want to just give away and just finish
right.
with it.
That's why it's
So
nagging.
that,
Yeah,
yeah, that's why it's called nagging,
yeah,
correct. The other one, which is called as rogue malwares, you
right,
know, this is again a pattern where the ransomware or the scareware to make the user believe that there is a virus in the computer
right.
and sell them a fake antivirus that actually installs a malware
Mm,
where can gain wrongful access to most of the user's data.
correct.
So this is something which I have seen quite a bit, in fact, on pirated websites where they embed your malware and then they
Right,
get all your informations in.
correct, correct.
So I think these are some of these dark patterns in total which are predominantly there today in the market online.
Right, right. Subhadra, after discussing so many dark patterns, the next logical question on everyone's mind is, aren't there any laws governing or regulating the use of such dark patterns? There are primarily the Consumer Protection Act 2019 regulates deceptive practices or dark patterns. The Central Consumer Protection Authority CCPA has issued guidelines for prevention and regulation of dark patterns as recent as in 2023. Now, these guidelines shall apply to all platforms systematically offering goods or services in India, advertisers, sellers, and all of these categories of people are prohibited from engaging in dark patterns, and continued use will actually attract fine or imprisonment. Not
Right.
only this, specific patterns attract additional regulations. Like, for instance, we were discussing disguised advertising. Guidelines for Prevention of Misleading Advertisements and Endorsements Act 2022 will apply to that. Of course, this
Yeah.
is in addition to the Consumer Protection Act. In fact, as recent as the first week of June this month, the
Right.
government has issued a further press release advising all e-commerce platforms to conduct self audits to identify dark patterns by conducting self audits, and within 3 months from conducting the self audit to take down and completely remove such dark patterns to ensure that such platforms are free from such dark patterns. The e-commerce platforms have also been encouraged to give like a self-declaration. Now, I don't know how effective that will be, but nevertheless, it has been given so. In addition, what happens is we also need to look at the what shall I say, the international take on dark patterns, because it's not something restricted only to India.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
world over, the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) has intensified its enforcement of strict regulations against dark patterns, and it considers it as an unfair trade practice or an unfair
Right.
deceptive business practice.
I think, Sandhya, I need to add up here by saying that it is remarkable to see that these dark patterns, which are so common, are being addressed by our regulators and
Correct.
law enforcement agencies as well. And they're pretty much very strict when it comes on these kind of digital awareness and presence.
Yes.
So I think we are definitely, I would say, ahead on these areas.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and also, Sandhya, a recent study by Advertising Standards Council of India, which we call as the ASCI, has also revealed that and found that about 52 out of 53, mind you, top Indian apps use dark patterns, which are deceptive design practices that in fact manipulate the consumers into a lot of unintended actions. So this
Correct.
is like a majority of the apps. So with today's consumers, in fact, relying overwhelmingly on online platforms for all their material needs, Regulations and guidelines also assume a lot of significance for this protection of consumers, as we have mentioned before.
Correct.
And however, if you look, it is also imperative that we as consumers also become aware about this existence of dark patterns and avoid falling prey to them. I think that is the most important thing.
Right.
And we can only save ourselves more by having more awareness on these things. And next time we go on online, I think we become more vigilant about these dark patterns and don't fall prey to them.
Right.
So, with that, I think we hope our viewers have found this episode of Dark Patterns informative. So, thanks for watching us and see you next time. Bye bye.